because so I'm unmuted now. So assalamu alaikum and a very good morning to all of you. A very hot, humid morning, I must say, as usual. Despite yesterday's rain, we have a hot, humid morning. For a minute, I go back to what is the question? Is it directed towards it? Thank you. Mere salam karna. So that's very good. At least somebody is having a good, nice morning. Good. I'm so happy, sir. Please pray for us too. Anyway, because it seems that yesterday's rain was a kind of a disaster. The temperature fell down all right, but the humidity is maddening. Anyway, let's come back. ओहो आपको बारिश नहीं नसीब हुई, अच्छा हुआ नहीं नसीब हुई बेटा, अगर हो जाती तो और ज्यादा गर्मी होती, अब बहुत ज्यादा हो जाता ना। ठीक है, चलो जो anyway मेरे ख्याल में शुरू करें। So I was saying कि I'll take a few minutes in the beginning to do the mid-layer cavity. बहुत important है बेटा, ज्यादा सवाल mid-layer cavity से ही आते हैं। बाकी तो खैर एक फॉर्मेलिटी है इसे। टिम्पैनिक मेम्ब्रेन आपको पता है, एयर ड्रम। जी फरमाइए, आवाज नहीं आ रही? ओके I'll just call the IT people. आवाज आ रही है? ओके फाइन, नो प्रॉब्लम। अच्छा जी, आवाज आ रही है, सो लेट्स स्टार्ट विद टुडेज।
मैम आपकी आवाज ठीक आ रही है।
ओके थैंक यू बेटा, पहले कंप्लेंट ही नहीं आ रही। थैंक यू सर, मोस्ट ग्रेटफुल।
इन बच्चों का मैम नेट प्रॉब्लम है, जिनकी आवाज नहीं ठीक जा रही।
ओके ओके ठीक है, नेट प्रॉब्लम आपकी तरफ से मेरी तरफ से है?
नहीं मैम, जो बच्चे लेक्चर ले रहे हैं ना, कुछ बच्चों की तरफ से है।
ठीक है, स्टूडेंट्स की तरफ से। ओके फाइन, थैंक यू
वेलकम मैम,
एक्सट्रीमली ग्रेट। So the tympanic membrane is this curtain-like structure which is present between the external layer and the mid layer. And इसकी development हम बहुत दफा कर चुके हैं। One quick recap is that on the outside we have, on the external surface we have a depression which is called cleft. First cleft between first arch and the second arch, pharyngeal arches. And then from the inside of the pharynx, developing pharynx, the mucous membrane, it grows out between the first arch and the second arch. This is called a pharyngeal pouch from the inside, and from the outside we have the first pharyngeal cleft. The ectoderm of the first pharyngeal cleft and the endoderm of the first pharyngeal pouch, they extend towards each other and they meet, come across each other. They do not fuse because in between these two, this ectoderm of the first pouch and the endoderm of the first, ectoderm of the first groove and the ectoderm of the first pouch. In between the two, you see some mesenchyme being trapped. So a layer of endoderm on the inside, then comes mesoderm, and then comes a layer of ectoderm. Together, they make up this structure which is called tympanic membrane. अभी जो mesenchyme है, इसकी contribution comes from both first and second arches, और ये जो mesenchyme है, this develops into collagen fibers. Remember one thing, ectoderm of the first arch है बेटा. So this will develop into stratified squamous epithelium, जबकि endoderm, the first pouch. Endoderm है, so it will develop into a simple epithelium. In this case, it is a simple cuboidal epithelium. Okay, that is as far as this is concerned. Middle layer में very quickly, ये हमने पहले भी किया था. This is the first pouch. Okay, endodermal line, first pouch. This extends laterally towards the first groove. Okay, as a result, it gets elongated. This elongated part, which is in over here, you have the pharynx. Over here, you have the developing pharynx. ये तो forebrain की cavity है बेटा. This is the developing pharynx over here. So this part which is in contact with the pharynx, this remains narrow and develops into auditory tube, pharyngotympanic tube. However, this distal part becomes dilated, and this extension is called tubotympanic recess. This tubotympanic recess then becomes dilated. ये देख लीजिए, it becomes dilated, and this dilated part then develops into tympanic cavity या mid layer cavity. I'm sorry. ठीक है जी. So please note that this tympanic cavity या mid layer cavity is in contact with the first groove over here. अच्छा, इनकस और मेलियस की हमने डेवलपमेंट कर दी थी. मेलियस, incus, they develop from the first arch, mesenchyme of the first arch, dorsal end पे. ठीक है, and the stapes develops from the, ये stapes है, this develops from the second arch. ये देख लीजिए, mesenchyme of the second arch, dorsal end पे यहाँ पे. Okay, ये हम बहुत पहले कर चुके हैं. Now you also know that these ossicles develop in the 7th week, and they develop in the 7th week and they ossify in the 2nd trimester of pregnancy. These ossicles are actually embedded in the surrounding mesenchyme. Mesenchyme surrounding the these ossicles develop from mesenchyme, okay, from the first and the second pharyngeal arch. These are surrounded by mesenchyme, obviously, and then this mesenchyme then gradually disappears. Only some mesenchyme is left that develops into muscles of these related to these ossicles and ligaments related to these ossicles. So all this mesenchyme gradually disappears around the three bones. Only a small bit of mesenchyme is left, which develops into the muscle and the ligaments of ligaments related to these ossicles. 8th month तक बाकी भी mesenchyme disappear कर जाती है. उसका होता क्या है अभी बताती हूँ मैं आपको. अच्छा जी, now we all said, we decided that the tympanic cavity was simply the evagination of endoderm of first pouch. ये जो distal end था वो dilate कर गया था. And we also said that the endoderm was lined by epithelium, which was cuboidal epithelium. Okay. Now, this tympanic cavity or middle ear cavity, developing middle ear cavity, this enlarges and as it enlarges, it encircles the ossicles and the ligament and muscles related to the ossicles. So this is simply lining the outside. ये wrap around, ये जो endoderm है, this wraps around the ossicles and the muscles, etc., related to the ossicles. Okay? And this epithelium then suspends the ossicles from the middle ear cavity, the walls of the middle ear cavity, through these ligaments. Now, ये जो middle ear cavity है ना, this extends further laterally. ठीक है? And इसमें vacuoles appear कर देते हैं. As it extends laterally into the bone, into the tympanic cavity. This vacuolization, small vacuoles appear. ये vacuoles join कर देते हैं, a cavity is formed. That is the tympanic cavity, and this has a lateral extension, which is called epitympanic recess. ये इंशाल्लाह आप लोग कल पढ़ेंगे. बाकी रह गया mastoid process. ये actually develop होता है after birth by the constant use and traction of the muscles attached to it, mainly the sternomastoid. ठीक है? ये जो at that point ये जो tympanic cavity है, tympanic ये middle ear cavity, this goes into this extends into the mastoid process. Mastoid process में भी air cells होते हैं. These air cells then, once they develop after birth, so these air cells then trap air into them. That is called the process of pneumotization. Muscles भी आपको मैंने पढ़ाए थे, middle ear cavity के. You have the tensor tympani muscle over here, somewhere over here, which develops from the first arch, mandibular division, and you have a stapedius muscle developing from the second arch in relation to the stapes. Okay? That is why the tensor tympani developing from the first arch gets its nerve supply from the mandibular division of the trigeminal nerve and stapedius muscle in relation with the stapes, bone, ossicle. This gets its nerve supply from the facial nerve because the facial nerve is the nerve of the second arch. अब आ जाते हैं आज का topic, and that is the internal ear. You may face a bit of difficulty here, but never mind. Once you are through with your middle ear and internal ear, I'll give you a quick recap. By the way, have you done the physiology of ear in our physiology department? Because I know one thing, not yet. No, okay. Thank you, Srar and Nimra. Thank you so much. Never mind. ये मैं अभी करवा रही हूँ आपको. I thought कि आप लोगों ने कर लिया होगा. That is why I picked up internal layer. Never mind. मैं इसको recap दे दूँगी. Later on, a quick recap. अभी के लिए आप ये सुन लीजिए कि this is the developing forebrain. ठीक है? This is the neural tube. This is the notochord. ये दो dorsal aorta. Okay. On the surface, you have ectoderm. On the surface of the developing brain, you have ectoderm, and this neural tube is simply neuroectoderm, that is invaginating. Now, what happens is on the surface of hindbrain ke level की बात कर रहे हैं. We are now talking about the hindbrain. Forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain की division आप already कर चुके हो. वो तो आपने first year में ही कर दी थी. So बहरहाल हम next lecture में इंशाल्लाह recap कर देंगे. So this is the level of the hindbrain. ठीक है? This is the developing pharynx, and this is the endoderm lining the pharynx. This is the ectoderm lying over the developing hindbrain neural tube. So there is a thickening of surface ectoderm. This thickening of surface ectoderm is called otic placoid. Beta, otic means it has everything to do with the air. बिल्कुल जिस तरह optic था, that had something to do with the eye. Otic is something to do with the air. ठीक है? Lateral surface of hindbrain. Okay. किस लेवल पे है? Caudal to the second pharyngeal arch. यहाँ पे. Now, as this otic placoid, as it forms, it deepens and indents the underlying mesenchyme. ठीक है? As it invades the underlying mesenchyme, ये जो placoid था, this now develops into vesicle, otic vesicle. This otic vesicle is lying medial to the tympanic cavity. ठीक है? Because this otic placoid, otic pit, the lips of the otic pit, they join each other and they dissociate themselves from the surface ectoderm, and hence a separate otic vesicle is formed. Okay? At the same time, the surface ectoderm then rejoins over here. So this otic pit dissociates itself from the surface ectoderm, and now it comes to lie medial to the tympanic cavity. अब उसी otic vesicle की हम बात कर लेते हैं. That structure that developed from surface ectoderm. With that, we discuss the development of internal layer. Okay. Now, this otic vesicle develops into membranous labyrinth. एक तो आप basic बात याद रख लीजिए. And surrounding the membranous labyrinth, you have the bony labyrinth. इसको surround करती है. That develops from surrounding mesenchyme. So आप ये एक basic बात याद रख लीजिए कि जो otic vesicle है, that develops into the different parts of membranous labyrinth. Okay? A constriction develops in the otic vesicle. This constriction divides the otic vesicles into two parts, a ventral part. बेटा मैं क्लास ले रही हूँ. ठीक है जी. A ventral part. Okay. Sorry. This is the ventral part that develops into saccule and then later on into cochlear duct. ये saccular part of the otic vesicle है. And dorsal part is the utricular part. So the otic vesicle में constriction develop होती है. That divides the vesicle into two, a ventral part which is the saccule and a dorsal part which is the utricle. Okay. इस utricle में से then you have the development of the utricle proper, semicircular canal, endolymph, etc. And saccular part ये जो है इसमें से saccule and cochlear duct develop होती है. अच्छा जी. अब utricle पे आ जाते हैं. Utricle जो था that was the dorsal part of the otic vesicle. ये part. ठीक है जी. अच्छा जी. From the medial side of the utricle, ये developing utricle के medial side से you have an extension going up. An extension कह लें या diverticulum कह लें. This diverticulum to begin with is narrow and towards its end it becomes dilated. This narrowed part is called endolymphatic duct, and this dilated part is called endolymphatic sac. 6 week में semicircular canals develop from this utricle. अब ये कैसे develop होती है इसकी बात कर देते हैं. Outpocketings develop from this utricle. 3 outpocketings develop. 1, 2 and 3. ये देख लीजिए. 3 outpocketings develop from this utricular sac. ये flattened सी outpocketing है. ये वही rounded type की नहीं है. ये flattened outpocketing. ठीक है. The central part of these, अब अगर outpocketing है बेटा तो double walled होगी. The central part of this wall, the layers of these wall fuse. The central part में it gets fused. जबकि peripheral part में this endolymphatic, ये जो duct है आपकी developing semicircular canal, इसका जो peripheral part है उसमें fusion नहीं होती. Only the central part में 2 layers they fuse with each other. ठीक है. ये बिल्कुल वही है बेटा जो आप लोग पिज्जा खाते हो ना with cheese at the periphery. तो वो जो peripheral part में sides पे जहाँ cheese है वो तो गोल सा हिस्सा रहता है और दरमियान में से जो रोटी नुमा flat cheese है that is a single layered structure. Okay. अच्छा जी. So ये जो central part जो fuse कर गया था ना बेटे, this fused part then degenerates. And the peripheral parts, ये जो हैं, these remain intact. They do not regenerate. जबकि ये जो central fused part थे, they degenerate. As a result, ये जो peripheral structures हैं, free rings, they develop into semicircular canal. You have 3 semicircular canals developing. You have a superior semicircular canal. You have a posterior semicircular canal. And you have a lateral semicircular canal. All these 3 semicircular canals, they are lying at right angles to each other. ठीक है. ये superior, ये posterior, and this is a lateral semicircular canal. अब होता ये है कि at both the ends the semicircular canal are ending in the central structure. ये देख लीजिए, both the ends of the semicircular canal are ending in this utricle. ये ठीक है. Now where they are ending over here, in every semicircular canal one end becomes dilated. Any dilatation is an ampulla. At its entrance into the utricle, every semicircular canal, ये दो ends हैं ना बेटे semicircular canals के, at both the ends, the semicircular canal is entering into this structure, the utricle. What happens is with every semicircular canal, one end gets dilated. Say for example, इसकी ये end dilate कर गई है, ये non-dilated रही है, इसकी ये end dilate कर गई है, this end remains non-dilated, and so on. Any dilatation I told you was an ampulla. So you have with every semicircular canal, you have a crus ampullae. That means you have a dilatation at one end, and this is the crus non-ampullaire. इसमें कोई dilatation नहीं है. ठीक है. Now, God has made it in such a way that the non-dilated ends of the superior and the posterior, they come in contact with each other. So the crus non-ampullaire of the superior and posterior semicircular canals, they come in contact with each other and they fuse with each other and form a common crus non-ampullaire. ठीक है, बाकी ये remaining तो आपको पता है ये ventricle बन गई. So you have now 3 semicircular canals, but you have 5 crus. 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is a common 5th crus. हालांकि यहाँ पे to begin with you have every semicircular canal had 2 crus, an ampullaire and a non-crus, ampullaire and crus non-ampullaire. 6 बन गए थे. But with the fusion of superior and posterior non-ampullaire, crus non-ampullaire, you have 5 crus. Okay, अभी तक do we have any questions? Fine, thank you, sir. Thank you so much. हाँ जी, so अब हम आ जाते हैं saccular part of the aortic vesicle. ठीक है, यूट्रिकल हमने खत्म कर ली. लेट्स कम टू द saccular part. ये हमने कहा था जो वेंट्रल पार्ट है इसका, दैट इज कॉल्ड सैक्यूल. ठीक है, तो ये सैक्यूल ही बनाता है. क्या होता है, what happens in the 6th week is that from this surrounded saccule and outpocketing arises. This outpocketing is in the form of a tube, so it is a tubular outpocketing arising from the inferior pole. This tubular outpocketing is called the cochlear duct. So this is a cochlear duct arising from the saccule. This saccule है. Okay. Now it goes on lengthening. लंबी होती जा रही है. This outpocketing cochlear duct goes on lengthening. There's little space over here, so it cannot accommodate the whole length of the saccular duct. So this saccular duct simply winds upon itself. Yeah. So अब इसका नाम change होके cochlear duct हो गया. So this is a cochlear duct which is still connected to the saccule. इसी से ही arise किया था, going round and round. It is still connected to the saccule. The small connection between the saccule and the cochlear duct develops into ductus reunions. Okay, so ductus reunions is a simple connection between the saccule and the cochlear duct. Okay, ये जो circular cochlear duct है ना, this takes 2.5 turns. This structure, I'm sorry. This entire structure, I told you earlier on that this entire structure, saccule and utricle, was surrounded by mesenchyme. Okay? And this entire structure, surrounded by mesenchyme, this mesenchyme develops into a hyaline cartilage model, which is called aortic capsule. ये देख लीजिए, ये cochlear duct है. ये सारी सराउंडिंग पिंक कलर की mesenchyme है. इस mesenchyme में से this is the developing cartilaginous model, which is the otic capsule, and this is still surrounding mesenchyme. Okay, this was taken from Lyngman, लेकिन ये जो है ये KLM की ड्राइंग ही है. अभी तक do we have any questions? No. Okay, fine. That's good. That's very nice. We don't have any question. अच्छा जी. So saccule पे आ जाते हैं. Still continuing with the saccular part of the otic vesicle. अब ये हमने cochlear duct बना दी थी. Lined by epithelium. ठीक है? And surrounded by. Okay. I'm sorry about this interruption. I'll go over it again. हम बात कर रहे थे इस space की. This space between the cochlear duct and the surrounding mesenchyme. On the outside तो मैंने आपको बताया था cartilage hyaline model, hyaline cartilage का model develop होता है. ठीक है? This is the space. This is the mesenchyme surrounding the cochlear duct. Vacuoles appear in this mesenchyme surrounding the cochlear duct, and these vacuoles, they join together to form a space. This space is called peri-lymphatic space. Actually, so this is the cochlear duct. This is the cochlear duct and lined by epithelium, surrounding by a shell of cartilage. This, in between this shell of cartilage, mesenchyme develops vacuoles that join together and form a space. Now this peri-lymphatic space surrounds the cochlear duct. Okay. However, some mesenchyme is still left. On the lateral side, this mesenchyme joins the cartilage outside by pieces of cartilage. This is called, by fibers, connective tissue fibers. This develops into what is called a spiral ligament. So spiral ligament develops between the cochlear duct and the cartilage on the outside. Okay. This cochlear duct is also connected to the periphery by this mesenchyme. This mesenchyme runs through the center of this entire model. So from here, mesenchyme is still left that connects the edge of the cochlear duct to the periphery. Okay. This mesenchyme then later develops into what is called modiolus, a central axis for the internal layer, modiolus. Okay. Now, with the presence of the modiolus के आने के बाद ये जो periphery में cochlear duct के surrounding जो peri-lymphatic space थी, that gets divided into two. ये सारी peri-lymphatic space, a part of it is joined to the periphery by a spiral ligament. जो बाकी रह गई, that is divided into two because of the presence of this modiolus. These two parts are called scala vestibuli, which is lying above the cochlear duct, and scala tympani, which is lying below the cochlear duct. ये cochlear duct है, Below the cochlear duct, you have scala tympani. Above the cochlear duct, you have scala vestibuli. ओके जी, अब ये जो है ना, the wall of the cochlear duct, ये between the scala vestibuli and the cochlear duct, ये जो wall है cochlear duct की, the wall of the cochlear duct which is present between the scala vestibuli and the cochlear duct, this wall is called vestibular membrane. ठीक है? And the wall of the cochlear duct which is lying between the scala tympani and the cochlear duct, ये वाली wall between the cochlear duct and scala tympani, ये जो wall है, this develops into basilar membranes. ठीक है? अब I told you this entire structure is covered by mesenchyme that develops into a cartilaginous model. This cartilaginous model, then वो जो पहले otic capsule थी, वो later on जाके 5th month में ये जो otic capsule थी, that develops into a bony labyrinth. अभी तक हमने जो बात की है ये सारी, this is membranous labyrinth, जो कि saccule और utricle से मिलके बनती है. That is the membranous labyrinth, और जो surrounding mesenchyme है, that first develops into a cartilaginous model, and then this cartilaginous model develops into this bony labyrinth. अब ये जो modulus है, this mesenchyme that connects the cochlear duct to the periphery, this I told you develops into mesenchyme. कैसे mesenchyme develops into modulus? Modulus is a bony structure. ठीक है? So this mesenchyme directly turns into bone. That means cartilage का model नहीं बनता. And this thing happens in intramembranous ossification. Intramembranous ossification में mesenchyme directly converts into a bone. ठीक है? So over here also intramembranous ossification occurs that converts this mesenchyme into bone. Okay, जी. Still continuing with the saccular part. Saccule की ही हम बात कर रहे हैं. ठीक है? अब ये to begin with, ये जो cochlear duct है, इसकी epithelium एक ही है, and that is simple columnar. Okay? But then later on, two ridges develop हो जाती हैं. एक outer ridge, एक inner ridge. ये इसकी enlarged view है. This is the epithelium. This is an outer ridge, and यहाँ पे inner ridge. Okay. The inner ridge जो है, ये inner ridge है. This develops into spiral limbus. और ये जो outer ridge है, इसके cells ये दो में divide हो जाती है, inner and outer. ये hair cells में develop हो जाते हैं. And these hair cells are covered by the structure which is called tectorial membrane, membrana tectoria. Okay? This membrana tectoria, please note, is connected to the hair cells. Now these hair cells plus tectorial membrane, these two structures together make up the organ of Corti, So the organ of Cochlear is simply hair cells plus dictorial membrane. So अब इसको impulses come from the auditory nerve. Auditory nerve is part of your vestibular cochlear nerve. ठीक है, इसका जो cochlear part है, वहाँ से यह इस यहाँ impulses आएंगी via the spiral ganglion. अभी बात करते हैं spiral ganglion. अच्छा जी, जल्दी से इसको वाइंड अप करते हैं because I hope this is the last slide. अब ये आपको बताया था initially the entire epithelium is the same, of the cochlear duct is the same, that is simply a columnar epithelium. But later on, in between these epithelial cells, the eighth cranial nerve का जो auditory fibers जो है ना, they grow in between these cells. The epithelium over here modifies जहाँ basilar membrane है ना, that is the part where the epithelium modifies into and develops into receptors. ये देख लीजिए, the epithelium is now developing into receptors. This is the receptor developing. अब ये जो structure है, you find this in the Christie. If you remember, हमने semicircular canal की ampullae की थी. ठीक है, so in the ampullae these structures develop. They are called crista ampullaire. Ampulla के अंदर ये crista, ये receptors है. ठीक है, utricle में we call them macula utricle and saccule में we call them macula saccule. ये basically they are nothing but receptors developing in connection with the auditory nerves. ये saccule में भी है, utricle में भी है. Okay, quickly, abnormalities of the ear. ये देख लीजिए, a small skin tag, auricular appendages. This is simply skin tags. ये accessory auricle, ये separate auricle बनाता है because you have an extra auricular hillock. ये skin tags जो है mostly anterior to the ear develop होती हैं. Unilaterally होती हैं, hardly ever seen bilateral, and they have this thing. Please note, they have a very narrow kind of a pedicle. इसमें generally it is just skin. Sometimes you have the cartilage present in it, but by and large it is just skin. Auricle develop ही नहीं हुआ because auricular hillocks नहीं develop हुए. This is an anomaly associated with first pharyngeal arch syndrome because mesenchyme proliferate नहीं करती, auricular hillocks नहीं बनते. That is why auricles fail to develop. इस condition is called anotia. Otia is something to do with the ear, so this is anotia. Okay, this is something very rare. Microtia, small ear, very small, rudimentary, properly developing नहीं हुआ. ठीक है, because mesenchyme की जो proliferation थी at this particular site, that was suppressed. It is generally associated with the other anomalies. में middle ear की anomalies हो सकती हैं, external ear, external auditory meatus की हो सकती हैं anomaly. Preauricular sinus, congenital preauricular sinus, ये हम पहले भी कर चुके हैं when we did the development of the kidney. In this condition, this is a bit like depression, present anterior to the auricle, somewhere this region, anywhere over here. ठीक है, very small pinpoint opening. It may, this sinus may contain a cartilaginous tissue as well, but by and large, एक sinus ही होता है. It may be associated with deafness or any other anomalies, particularly kidney anomalies. Maybe, ज़रूरी नहीं कि हो. ठीक है. अब why does this thing develop? या तो there is abnormal proliferation of mesenchyme at this particular site, or first groove जो है उसकी closure में defect है. So it could be because of defective closure of the first groove, या more commonly जो ectoderm है ना, इसका एक fold that falls inside and remains inside, developing into the sinus. इसको हम simply कहते हैं sequestration of ectodermal fold, meaning that the ectoderm, overlying ectoderm, just folds upon itself and comes to lie under the developing skin over here. ठीक है. It may run in the families, familial हो सकता है. It could be bilateral, it could be unilateral. Anything. Auricular fistula is simply a narrow canal that connects the auricle with that is the external layer with the tympanic cavity, or the external layer with the tonsillar sinus. ये भी हम कर चुके हैं. This is something very rare. Atresia of external auditory meatus. आपको बताया था, to begin with, the external auditory meatus was simply closed by a proliferation of cells. Then these cells, central cells, they undergo degeneration and the entire canal was formed. But इस case में the deep part of the meatus is open. The superficial part जो है, that is closed by bone. This is associated with the syndrome, first arch syndrome. अब क्यों होता है? It could be abnormal development in the first or second arch, or this may also be associated with middle ear anomalies, internal ear anomalies. It could be unilateral or bilateral, but this is not something common. Rare ही होता है. So external auditory meatus अब यहाँ पे बना ही नहीं है. The ear has developed, but the external auditory meatus does not develop. This is something very rare, and this is something present because of lack of invagination of ectoderm to form the first groove. First groove नहीं बनता. First groove से अगर आपको याद हो, external auditory meatus develops in the first groove. ठीक है. As a result, ये meatal plug जो है वहाँ पे जो पड़ा हुआ है, that fails to disappear and no external auditory meatus is formed. So that was the last slide. And do we have any questions? मैं semicircular canals repeat कर देती हूँ. देखो बेटा, ये otic vesicle था जो कि divide हुआ into saccule anteriorly and utricle posteriorly. ठीक है. Now, ये जो we are now talking about the utricle, this part, जिसके medial side से आपको बताया था, and outgrowth, the projection from the medial side develops into endolymphatic duct, or उसका distal end is dilated to form the endolymphatic sac. Yeah. Now, what happens is a 6th week में from this utricle, ये utricle है, from 6th week में outpocketings, flattened outpocketings, 3 outpocketings arise करती हैं यहाँ से from the utricle. These outpocketings are like this. ये center में utricle है, इससे ये 3 outpocketings arise कर रही हैं. ये double layered होती है. This is what they are. But then what happens is, इस center में से इनका central part तो fuse कर जाता है. दो walls center वाले part में तो fuse कर गई, but in the periphery these walls remain separate. So ये इस तरह center वाला part fuse कर गया, periphery की तरफ the walls remain separate. ये जो central part जो fuse कर गया था, this breaks down और अब ये 3 tunnels बन गई, arch shaped tunnels बन गई 3 that open into this utricle. यहीं से ये rise की थी ना. So these 3 tunnels open, sorry, चलो किसी को ही करते हैं. These 3 tunnels that are developing, they open into the utricle at 2 ends, this end and this end. So you have 6 openings in the utricle. These outpocketings are given the name of semicircular canals. You have a superior semicircular canal, we have a posterior semicircular canal, we have a lateral semicircular canal. All these semicircular canals are lying at right angles to each other. Now, what happens is every semicircular canal at the point of its opening into the utricle, every semicircular canal, one end where it opens, so one opening dilates. This is called cross-ampulare dilatation. Okay. Similarly, posterior semicircular canal can be one end dilates at the point of entry into utricle. Lateral semicircular canal can be one end dilates at the site of entry into the utricle. These dilated ends are called cross-ampulare. So every semicircular canal has one dilated end and one non-dilated end. Now the superior and posterior semicircular canals, उनकी जो non-dilated crust हैं, non-dilated limbs जो हैं, they fuse with each other. So now you have 5 openings. ठीक है, because superior and posterior semicircular canal की एक common opening. अब बताइए. Okay, you're welcome, my dear. With this, we come to the end of the lecture. If there is anything you do not understand, तो जब हम internal year कर लेंगे, उसके बाद मैं इसको एक recap दे दूँगी आपके लिए. Okay. Thank you very much and जी, बताइए. Easy था मैम. Okay. Thank you very much, Isra. Thank you very much. God bless you. God bless you all, my dears. And it's 11 o'clock, so अब मैं किसी और का टाइम नहीं लेती. I'll do that every day. आज मैं wind up कर रही हूँ. खुदा हाफ़िज़.